Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to 3D model a cosplay helmet. All right, first thing we're going to do is just go ahead and open up ZBrush. Your ZBrush UI might look different than mine, but I will put a download link to my ZBrush UI in the description below. Open a tool and we're going to go to the male body model. Double click to open, hide the lightbox menu, and pull out body model onto the screen. We're going to go up into edit mode. Before we get started, I'll show you how to load the config. All right, so you just go to preferences, config, expand that menu, and you're going to load UI. I will give you this UI right here in the description below. You will click that and open it. We have symmetry turned on, which is good for now. Go over to the subtool menu. We're going to have a couple different things here on this body model. We are going to delete the hair. Click always OK, and then you won't get that question mark. We're going to delete the eyes, delete the skull, delete the teeth. We don't need any of that. We just need this right here. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to hold down Control and we are going to select the head. All right. We are going to turn off perspective because it's making the mask a little wonky. A hide point, delete hidden. This action is not executed while the mesh has layers. So we've got to go to the layer tab and we are going to delete these layers. Delete that layer, delete that layer. All right, let's see if we can redo this again. Go to high res. All right, high resolution is what we want. We're going to go to Dynamesh, reDynamesh, select the head. Then we're going to hide point, which hides the part that is showing. We're going to delete hidden and close holes. All right, now that we have the head model, it doesn't really matter how much detail it has. But what we're going to do is we're going to leave this head model the same way. We're going to duplicate it. Over in your subtool list, we're going to select duplicate. We're going to turn that first one off. We're going to rename it to head form. We'll just leave it as head. And this will be renamed to helmet form. All right, we're going to leave that one on. This is the one that we're going to modify. And what we're going to do is take the space that the ears, the nose, the mouth, and the overall shape of the head has, and we are going to fill in these voids in between each structure. So the ear is a structure, the nose is a structure, and so on. And you'll see what I mean as I go. So I'm going to change my draw size. I'm going to go down to clay buildup brush, and I'm going to just build in here. Resolution is a little higher than I want, so we'll go back over to geometry and we will make it 500. All right, that's fine. All right, then we'll make sure subdivide. Is it drawing smoothly? Yeah, it seems to be drawing pretty smoothly. All right, so we're just going to fill in this negative space. Turn on back face masking over on the left. We're going to go to stroke. Make sure lazy mouse is turned off because we don't need it. You could use inflate inside these eye sockets if you want to, but that's okay. I had the clay buildup brush on. All right. Then what you want to do to make sure that it becomes all one mesh, you can just hold down Control, and that's redynameshing when you drag onto the screen. I'm just using hold down Control, left click and drag. All right, so this is for y'all to do, and y'all will have an asset of your own. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to, if you were to draw a straight line from this point of the head down to the tip of the nose, that's essentially what we're doing. Okay, we're going to fill this void. If you want to, you can turn your Z intensity down to maybe 5. Okay, and then we're going to fill this void from the tip of the nose down to the chin. Okay. 5 might be a little bit too low. Turn it up to 10. Right. And that's what we're doing is we're filling these voids. Okay, now we're going to move over to the ear and we're going to fill this void. If you were to imagine a straight line from this outer point of the back of the skull to the tip of the ear, that's what I'm doing. Okay, and then again, this outer point right in here to the tip of the ear, that's what I'm doing. I'm filling this void. Okay. Resolution might be set a little high. You could probably go down to 200. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. And let's see what happens. All right, cool. That's a little bit better, actually. All right, and then we want to go this void as well. See this voided space right here? Tip of the ear to the outer part of the skull here. We're going to fill that in. You'll see why I'm doing this here in a few minutes. Okay. If we were to just ZRemesh a mask that we put on this head, it would take essentially the shape of the head in its current state. And what will happen is you'll have a jagged ZRemesh, jagged polygons. Then you have to drag them around and manipulate them even further. But what we want is we want to imagine the shape that a helmet would take around the head, and we're making our job easier when we go to create the helmet. So I'm just kind of smoothing this out. And then what we'll do is we'll turn on the head model again, okay? And then you'll see where this mesh on the inside is located comparatively to the head. You can turn on transparency if you want, okay? Now that we've got kind of those voids filled based upon the shape of the head, you can go back in here, add a little bit more. It's a little bit too high. So we'll turn it back down to 5. And we're just trying to encompass the head. You're not really worried about the ear because the ear can be kind of smushed down in a cosplay helmet. It's not really going to hurt the person that's wearing it or anything like that. You know, usually in a football helmet or something like that, a motorcycle helmet, the ears will be smushed down just a little bit, not too much to where it's completely uncomfortable or anything like that. So we're not too worried about the ear, but that's why we're doing this. So we're just going to continue building this up just a little bit. All right. You can observe if it's not quite as smooth as you want, it's no big deal. What you can do is just go ahead and turn your draw size up, hold down Shift for smooth, and we can turn the Z intensity down to something like 10, and then you can smooth this out. Back face masking isn't on, so maybe put that on if you want to, if you see that it's creating problems with your model. And then I can just build this up a little bit more and then turn the draw size down, smooth it out. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we want to get pretty close to the shape we're looking for. All right. We're almost there. Follow that jawline out like that. Might have got a little bit too big. Just go ahead and smooth it back down. Okay. So jaw's a little bit too much. All right. Let's see here. A little bit right in there. You can go to the move tool and you can pull that out just a little bit. That's another thing you can do. If you see an area that it would be easier to adjust, to just grab the move tool and move things around, that's perfectly fine. All right. Again, I have symmetry on, which you can turn on with X. You can turn off with X, or you can go to the transform tab and you can turn symmetry on and off here based upon which plane you want to have symmetry. All right. So pretty good job. You can see the head is located in there, and that's what we want. Now, I'm going to turn this head to the side. Okay. Kind of reposition it to where this part of the jaw creates a nice flat plane in association with essentially your plane here, your workspace. Okay, let's see. Not quite what I want. We will go a little bit further. Takes a minute to kind of get it oriented properly just by the movement tool, the camera adjustment tool, rather. See, I would highlight that. It's not quite what I want to highlight. I want to highlight more like, that's closer for sure. That's closer. All right, so we want to control I to invert that mask, and then we're going to go to hide point, delete hidden, close holes. Okay, so now you see how it kind of formulates what would look like a Red Hood mask or a Deathstroke mask or something like that. That's kind of what I'm looking for. You can also do it to where it includes a little bit further down here at the bottom. So we'll go ahead and undo with Control Z, undo, undo, and we want to encompass this as well. So we'll mask off that area. All right, so we can go with that, and we're going to go to hide point, delete hidden, close holes. Maybe that's a little bit better. And then if you want to, you can drag this out a little bit. You can come here and you can adjust this down to where this maybe becomes a little bit more smooth. Okay, so this is essentially how you would start making a mask for a character, maybe like a Deadpool mask or something like that. At least this is the way that I do it. Then you can adjust these if you want to, if you see kind of a space that doesn't look very smooth. All right. Now that we have that, we can turn off polyframe mode, okay? That shows you the different poly loop lines that are going across. We can turn off the head, and this is the shape that we have. It's closed on the bottom. It's not perfectly smooth, but it takes the general shape of what the inside of a helmet would be, regardless of the type of helmet that you're creating. All right. So then what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this just in case we've got to modify it in the future, if we've got to go back to that original shape or original model, okay? And then we can ZRemesh and do this a couple different ways. If you want, turn polyframe mode just so that you can observe it. But then what you can do is ZRemesh, okay? These adjustments over here that I have up here, it's because I use them pretty frequently. So you can detect the edges, okay? You can keep creases, and you can turn on half of the resolution of that polyframe mode, or that ZRemesh mode, that topology mode, okay? And then I'm just going to, it's going to keep the general shape of what the item is. I'm going to keep ZRemeshing. You can see that these polygons are getting fewer and fewer. It divides them in half every time you do this. And what I'm looking for is looking for good poly loops, something that's consistent from front to back, consistent from the front, over the top, and down to the back. That's what I'm looking for. Nice, clean topology. Because whenever we're doing the hard surface modeling of this item, see, that's kind of generally the shape of what would be a motorcycle helmet, okay? It might end up being a little bit smaller than the head form itself, but the easy way to adjust that is just go over to the move tool. I'm not exactly sure where my move tool is at this moment in time. All right, it's probably based upon where the full body model was. So we're going to you just zoom out by holding down Control, right-clicking, and pushing further, front or back with your mouse, and it will zoom in and out on the object. Another way that you can do it is by zoom. Oh, not what I wanted. Where is zoom over on, here we go, zoom. So you can zoom in and out that way too. Okay, but hold down Control, right click, and hold with your mouse with the right click while holding Control at the same time. Move your mouse back and forth, and that's how you can adjust the model, how close you are to it. Well, you can turn off this lock, okay? Then you can hit this little icon right here. It will pin to where your subtool is in space, okay? And then you can rehome that subtool as well. But before we do that, we should have done this at the beginning, but we can do it now, so it's a learning experience. Anyway, we're going to select the head subtool, okay? You can see with the polyframe mode that we have the head selected. You can turn that on or off, it doesn't matter. You're going to collapse the subtool menu, go to geometry, go all the way down here to the bottom, and we're going to recenter this in space, in the workspace, okay? So we're going to hit on X. It's already on 0. Hit Tab, 0 on Y, 0 on Z, and it will automatically recenter that in space. You see how where it was located? The body, the full body that we had originally was centered in the workspace. The helmet wasn't, or the head wasn't. So now what we're doing is adjusting that. If you want to select this subtool up here, you can hold down Alt and left click on that subtool, rather than going to your subtool menu, okay, based upon the subtools that are visible at that moment in time. So we're going to readjust this subtool as well. Geometry, we're going to go to position, 0 on X, 0 on Y, 0 on Z. It's going to center it to space. And we'll go ahead and turn this other subtool on too, just to get it where it needs to be. Go to geometry, click on position, 0 on X, 0 on Y, 0 on Z. You can hit enter on the last one for Z. And everything is centered to the workspace. Now we can turn this original back off. We can leave the head model on. We will select the one that we're working on that we have been ZRemeshing, okay? You can see that the lines are where we want them to be. We can go back to move. It isn't selected on, it is in the right spot because obviously we changed the position, and when you change the position of a model, it will leave your move tool where it was previously. So we're going to unlock that. We're going to pin that to that object. We can do the same thing with these others. Okay, pin this one, pin. All right, go back to this bottom one. All right, there we go. Now we can use the move tool to scale this. You don't have to use scale. You can specifically move tool, because in the move tool, you can use the scale tool too. The scale tool is I'm going to turn off X for symmetry. The scale tool is the yellow cube or yellow square that's in the center of the move tool, the move widget. Okay, then we're going to relock it so it's locked to the item itself, and then we're going to scale that up. All right, you see what it's doing there? It's scaling up. Now, if you get to the point where you're like, oh, it's getting too wide on the right, okay, so I want to scale it up that way, see where my chin is. I can grab the arrow here. Okay, you see how when I manipulate it, it distorts the object? So what we're going to do is turn down focal shift. Whenever you're moving an object for the first time and you're using the move tool, if you don't have focal shift down to -100, this is a new thing that ZBrush did. I'm sure there's probably a setting in there that you can manipulate it and change that. But if you want to move something without it getting distorted, then you want to turn focal shift down to -100. All right, so I've kind of got it where it needs to be, and I want to continue scaling it. Okay, see how it encompasses the back of the skull, the top of the head. This part, essentially your forehead, is not encompassed yet. So I can click that yellow box. It can scale it up a little bit more. You got to imagine when you're creating creating armor that's going to be 3D printed, you want a little bit of negative space inside where your head is going to reside once that helmet is on your head. So you want a little bit of space, okay? So if we're imagining our head is roughly, let's just say, front to back 9 inches, side to side 7 or so inches or something like that. This is maybe like 1/2 inch of space, 1/4 inch of space, and so on. So I just want to scale it a little bit more. Is it too wide to the right, to the left? There's too much space for the ear. I don't quite need that space. So you can do that a couple different ways. You can go back to edit mode, grab your move tool, turn symmetry back on by hitting X. Okay, you see the 2 little red dots. That means symmetry is on, and I can adjust this. Okay, grab that with a move tool, have the move brush decently sized, and then I can squeeze that in. Again, the ears, it's okay if they collapse a little bit. I don't quite need this much space down here where the jawline is, so I can change my move tool or my size on my brush, and I can push that in a little bit. Okay, now how I'm moving around the model like this, if you hit shift when you're moving a model, it will snap to that next plane. Okay, so if you can imagine looking at a box, okay, and it's split into, we'll just go ahead and explain this way. We're going to go to append, okay, and we're going to select that new subtool, and we're going to go down to subtool, close that menu. We're going to go to initialize, and we're going to Q-cube. Q-cube, essentially, it resizes that cube to its simplest form, still having a few poly loop lines. All right, so if you can imagine looking at this box, and when we rotate this, snap, snap, it snaps at the next 90-degree turn, if that makes sense. Okay, you see how that is? That's essentially the way that it's snapping. So we're going to turn the model, snap, snap, snap. You can hit shift as you're turning it. So what you're doing is you're turning the model by holding down right mouse button. Okay, you hold down right mouse button and that turns the model. If you want to turn it to where it snaps to the next 90-degree angle, then you let off shift, right click on your mouse again, hold it down, turn, and then hit shift. It'll automatically snap to the next 90-degree angle. All right. Let's continue on. We'll turn off that cube. We might leave it. We might end up needing it in for the future, which we probably will because we will scale this helmet inside the space. All right. So here we go. We have a pretty good shape of a helmet. All right. Poly loop lines are pretty good. We can always add others in. We can go down to low resolution so you can see what it really looks like. Based upon the shape that it is, I'm not worried about the ears protruding out. That's not a big deal. You can hit high res, low res, and you can see. Low res is where you want to be whenever you're modifying the model and changing the poly loop lines, because you'll be a little bit more precise. Then you can hit high res and it'll show you what it looks like when it's all nice and smoothed out. Low res is where I like to be whenever I'm initially changing the shape of the subtool. All right, so we're going to go ahead and turn the head off. We don't need it on right now, but we want a cavity in here, okay? And in order to do that, we need to delete some of these. So the first thing we're going to do is just like a brush, standard brush, clay brush, inflate, any of those other brushes you use to sculpt on the model, but you have the Zmodeler brush, okay? With my UI open, your Zmodeler brush is going to be down here. Whenever I hover over one of the polygons, I've got the Zmodeler brush selected. When I hover over one of the polygons, you can see it highlight. When I hover over one of the poly loop lines, you can see it highlight, okay? You see that. Hover over. You don't need your draw size this big. I'm going to leave it this big. It doesn't really matter. It's just easier for me to see instead of getting it this small, you know what I mean? That's fine. It just depends on your personal preference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this bottom, okay? So I'm going to see kind of where the poly loop lines are. I'm going to mark this portion right here, okay? This is where it starts to go from flat to curved, the way that the polygons, this is a polygon, this is a poly loop, okay, or polyline. This portion right here is where it turns from a flat face on the side of the helmet to where it starts to curve underneath. I'm going to remove this, okay? So I'm highlighting, and when I highlight one side, it highlights the other because I've got symmetry turned on, and I'm going to hold down Alt, left click, and I can highlight, okay? Or I can hold down Alt, left click and hold, and then I can continue to highlight. I can highlight them individually by left clicking once and not holding, or I can hold down and highlight as well. All right, now that I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and go to Auto Group. You see what happened? It automatically changed the grouping of different things, okay? Now, I can highlight this again, and you can see it a little bit better because the color is a little different than what it was last time. There were two different shades of pink that were really close to each other, so that's why I did that, so you could see a little bit better. Now that that's done, okay, I'm holding down Alt and right-click, holding down Alt to right-click to move the model like this. I'm not holding anything, but right-click on the mouse to rotate it like this, okay? Snap with Shift, snap with Shift, snap with Shift, okay? I'm going to turn and look at the bottom. You can see the orientation of the model by this little guy, this little head up here, okay? So now I'm zooming in by holding down Control, right-click, holding down Control, right-clicking and holding, and moving in and out, okay? Now, we've got that selected. Whenever you want to change the way that you modify in Zmodeler, you can, by default, it is on QMesh, okay? QMesh, how you get to that menu and change the modifications of Zmodeler is you hover over a section of the model, either a polygon or a poly loop line, and you hold down the space bar on the keyboard. This will pull up your Zmodeler menu, okay? By default, left click automatically increases the size whenever you pull a polygon and pull out, okay? By default, that's what happens. I'm just left clicking, holding, but if you left click once based upon an action you've already taken, it will extrude that based upon the same distance that you extruded the last item you extruded. You see what I mean? So if I extrude, left click and hold and pull out like that. If I want to extrude again the same distance, I left clicked once, not hold and drag, but left click once, and it will extrude to the same height. You see what I'm saying? Just different ways of manipulating the model. Okay, now, if I want to manipulate this to where I want to delete, I'm going to hold down the space bar while hovering over a polygon. I'm going to go to the delete menu. Okay, everything that I have highlighted is going to delete. You see what that did? Okay, now you can see inside the helmet. Now you can see inside the helmet. All right, let's turn the head form back on. Turn off the cube. Now you can see the way the model looks with the head form there. We've got that one turned on, which we don't need. We'll go ahead and move that up. Now, if you want to move your subtools in the list, you can increase the amount that you see at one period of time. And then if you want to move it, you can either have the subtool selected that you want to move up in order, or you can left click and drag up. Make sure that you left click and drag on one of these open spaces, because you don't want to end up clicking one of these other selections and end up, you know, changing the way that the model works, the item works. We're going to move this up and out of the way as well. We don't need that. Which one are we on here? We don't need that. We just need the head model and the shape of our helmet. Okay. Actually, I moved the wrong one. So we'll move that back down. Turn that one on, turn that one off. And there we go. All right, so now you can see up inside the helmet, you see where the head resides inside of the helmet. So what we were doing initially is we were trying to keep or adjust the helmet to where if you were to pick this up, slide it on your head, it has the appropriate amount of negative space inside that helmet to slide over a human head. That's essentially is what we did in the very beginning. I had you save this one. Okay, I had you save this one because what you can do is you can export this, save this somewhere on your computer, and then you can use this as a base to get to this point in the future. Another thing you can do, since you've already refined this, we're going to go back to here, hit Control Z, okay? And then you can do this as well. You can duplicate this one. I like to duplicate my subtools based upon the stage that they are at. You can export this one too because it's already kind of refined with the proper poly loops and so on. We'll go ahead and move it up. We can change that later and export that if we want to. But we're going to operate with the one that we have right now. Okay. You know, since we're on this topic, we're going to go ahead and select this one in the subtool. I've got solo mode on, so it's the only one showing. Okay. And we're going to go to auto group. It's just going to keep it all in one group. And we're going to scroll up by left clicking. See when that arrow appears on your menu list over on your right hand side, excuse me. You can collapse the subtool menu if you want to. I just like to go to export, find a place to save it, 3D modeling, 3D, where are we at here? 3D files, Red Rising, Ares Helmet, and this is helmet form base. Okay, we're just going to save that. It's going to save as an OBJ, and we're going to export that. Okay. It's saved, and we can use it later for another helmet when we model a new helmet for cosplay. We can turn off solo. You can see the head, and this is how we can start modifying this. All right. So I don't know how much time we have today for the project that I have planned, but what we may end up doing is just modeling a generic helmet. Nah, we're going to go ahead and try and model the one that I had planned to model. All right, I'm going to turn off the head. We don't need it at the time. We're going to go back and delete this. Again, hold down spacebar, hovering over a polygon. You can make a selection. Right now, we're going to delete. We're going to delete all of that. All right, now I'm going to pull up some images on my little canvas here. This is called Pureref. Okay, you can find, I'll put the download link in the description, but the way that it works is it's just a blank canvas. Then you can locate files on your computer. All right, OneDrive, 3D modeling, Red Rising, Ares Helmet, and then you can select all of these image files. I'm going to hold down Shift and select all of these image files, except for these two, because they're not very good. And that one and that one. All right, hit open. And it's going to import all these files into a canvas and arrange them to where I can view all of them at one time. I can just zoom in and out. You'll learn to use the program. You hold down space or middle mouse button to move like this, and then you just use your scroll wheel to move in and out, and then you can, of course, hold your middle mouse button to zoom, to move right to left and stuff like that. All right, so these are some images that I've got online. I don't know exactly which one I'm going to go with, probably variations from all of them. And this is what I like to use whenever I'm looking for reference images for something that I'm 3D modeling. I'm going to drag this over to my other screen so you won't see it probably for the remainder of the video, but that's what I use. Like I said earlier, I will put the link in the description below the video so that y'all can utilize that if you would like to. All right, so now we're going to start manipulating this helmet. Various times throughout modeling this, I will turn the head model on and off. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and we're going to start pulling some items around here. You can use a subtool in this way by just going to the Move tool, and you can pull these individual vertices and polygons down. It doesn't really, it's not technically hard surface modeling, but I find it to be easier than movement along edges inside the Zmodeler brush. I will move in different ways inside the Zmodeler tool. But for right now, when I'm doing big movements along edge boundaries of helmets and pieces of armor and stuff like this, I like to use just the standard move tool. All right. All right. So, and then you'll see each one of the vertices. A vertex is where 2 points connect. Okay. I can see each one of those that are highlighted, and then I know precisely where I'm pulling around and moving the object. I move around the object that I'm working on to see the different angles, because depending on the angle that you're viewing the object, you might not know if you're moving it the right way. So I'm always changing my camera angles to make sure that I'm moving lines and polyloops and polygons around the model in the correct way, because you can be looking at it from this direction and then change direction, and then it's flared out and it's just not looking the way that you want it to or that you envisioned. You see what I mean? All right. Keep going, changing angles as I go to make sure that I'm manipulating this model in the way that I want to manipulate it. And then what I like to do is I like to keep the polyloop lines pretty consistent throughout the entire model. So instead of leaving it all jagged up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, what I like to do is keep it to where it's kind of on the same plane. That same loop is on the same plane, and all the polygons that are attached to it are roughly the same size. And if they do get bigger, they only gradually get bigger rather than drastically get bigger around the entire model. That's my idea behind what I'm doing here. And I like to 3D model in this way because if you can make something look good at this low of a resolution, get close to the overall shape that you want, whenever you go into high res mode, things will retain their shape and crisp up and be nice and smooth. So I like to model in this low resolution mode in the Zmodeler brush, essentially with polyframes turned on. You turn it on right here. Okay. That's how you're doing it. And continuing on. Again, I'm not really worried about the ears because the ears can kind of smush in beside the head inside of the helmet. All right, you got to imagine this isn't for 3D modeling a character where you're going to just print it on a resin printer and use it for like D&D or miniatures or something like that, something you're just 3D printing to sit on your desk. Because then what you can do is you can just create these essentially like this. You could create that and just sculpt the helmet over the top of it. You could still do hard surface modeling, okay? But it doesn't matter if the items collide at that point because it's just, you know, space inside of the model and it's all going to be printed as one. Why I'm doing what I'm doing is because this is all from the standpoint of you wearing it. So you don't want things colliding like this ear is. All right. But again, we're not worried about the ears. Continuing on. All right, so now I'm just kind of trying to decide, look at the polyloop lines, looking at the polygons as I rotate around the model, adjusting the polyloop lines. See, this is a little bit more drastic than I want, so I want to pull this down. And again, you can push that back in, push that back in, push that back in. I'm just grabbing, left clicking and holding like I'm using the move tool on anything else, and I'm just pushing back in. We want this helmet to fit nice and snug, not be too oversized for the human head form that's on the inside. All right, pull this back, pull that back, adjust a little bit, pull that back, pull that back. I don't know, I'm just kind of doing my own little stylization of what I'm envisioning the helmet to look like in a low resolution form. Okay, changing the angle so that I can get that little flare out. You see what I mean? All right, moving on. This polygon isn't quite consistent with the next polygon. Too many drastic changes like that. We can move this down here, move this down here. Keep adjusting. I know this is kind of tedious work, but if you want your model and everything to look right, as you go up into higher resolutions, this is how I do it. Okay, so I want an open-shaped visor slot for the eyes in here. And the way that I want to get that is I'm probably going to end up inserting a poly loop. Okay, so what you can do is you can go back to the Zmodeler brush. You can hover over a line instead of a polygon. Hover over a line. Make sure insert is turned on. And you can do this a couple different ways. I'm going to left click and hold and slide it down to just above the eyes because I want it to be a narrow slit. Okay, and then I'm going to hover over this line. Okay, and I'm going to slide that up. Again, I want it to be narrow. Okay, then these are following this contour. So what I want to do is go back to the move. And you can move it like this, but then you're going to have to end up moving multiple lines. They're going to get distorted as far as the distance between the polygons and so on. So in this instance, I'm going to turn my move brush or my brush down. I'm going to hover over this point instead of a line, instead of a polygon, this point, which is called a vertex. I'm going to go to move. Okay. Then I'm just able to interact with just this vertex. You see what I mean? And what it's doing is just moving that, okay? But if you want to keep it constrained to this polygon here and not distort this poly loop, you can hover over and you can go to slide, and it will slide along that poly loop without getting distorted. Now, you can also go this way along this poly loop, but I don't want to. I'm going to slide up along that poly loop. I'm going to do the same thing here, okay? And I'm going to end up pulling this down, this up, this up. Now I can keep moving on. Slide that up, slide that up, slide that up, slide that up. Now what I'm doing with these poly loops is I'm essentially drawing the outline of where the slit in the helmet is going to go for the eyes to be able to see through the helmet, okay? If you imagine, I want my slit to be here, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just drawing the outline of where that is going to be. And then what you can do is you can hold down Alt, left click, and then you can delete, and look what that did. It created a slit for our wearer to see out of the helmet, directly in line with the eye sockets that are there. Now, if you can imagine, you want to be able to look right to left by just moving your eyesight right to left. You know what I mean? Like actually moving your eyes, looking forward, and then just moving your eyes and seeing out of your peripheral. If you were to keep this, you wouldn't be able to see out of your peripheral. So we're going to remove that as well. Now you can see out of your peripheral vision. All right. So I also want it to be opened down the front here. Now, what I can do is I could adjust these poly loops, but I don't want to. I don't want to distort what I have going on there. So I'm going to insert another one because I only want a narrow slit down the front here. Just a narrow slit, okay? About like that, okay? And we can do it gradually rather than all at once if we want to. Right. I'm not exactly sure why it is removing more than I selected. Ah, I know, because it's in front. So we want to go to the manipulation tool, go to delete, holding down space over a polygon. Okay, I'm hovering over a polygon. Delete, we want to just do a single poly, but it will delete these others because anything that's highlighted is associated with the first one you delete. Okay, that's what we're doing there. All right, so we just deleted that. And the reason why we want to do this, because if we wanted to put a visor on the inside, we don't want the distance offset from this plane to be different from this plane. So we always want to get our base model consistent as we work on it. We can hover over this poly loop because it's absolutely unnecessary to continue having this poly loop. We're going to delete that, okay? You can hold down on a poly loop. If you want to delete a poly loop, I'll bring that back. You hover over, you hold down Alt while you have the insert tool selected, hold down Alt, left click on that poly loop, and it will delete that one you're hovering over. But it will also delete all the way across your helmet. So if you try to delete this poly loop, for instance, okay? It is necessary because it constrains that corner right there. But watch what happens when I delete it. Hover over, hold down Alt, left click. Look, you see how it automatically jumped to being connected right there. Press Control Z to undo. Now, this is unnecessary, this poly loop. But what we can do is fix the way that it looks. We can just slide up around the model just so that we don't have tiny polygons and big polygons around the back. Slide up. We want things to be as consistent as possible because it makes a nice clean mesh. All right. Then we can grab this, move that up, grab this, move that up. We can slide this down. Now we can slide it along there. Nice and straight. How many points do we have here? We could do another thing too, is we could delete this, insert a poly loop here. Then we can bridge. We're going to hold down spacebar while hovering over this poly loop. Hold down spacebar, go to bridge, and we're going to leave it on edges, and we're going to bridge that right there. Okay. Then we can go to auto group. Actually cancel. We're going to go. I actually hit the wrong one. I hit group split. We're going to go to auto group. Makes it all the same color again. Then we've got a problem here. We can delete this one, insert a poly loop there by going back to insert, holding down spacebar while hovering over that poly loop. Insert, okay? Then we're going to go back to spacebar again, hold down, bridge. Then we're going to left click there, it connects that together, left click there, and connects that together. Now we don't have any triangles. Auto group again. And I don't like that color because it's too dark. There we go. Auto group, and now it's all one. Consistent poly groups all the way around the back. We can continue to refine this a little bit more by sliding up these vertices and making it nice and smooth. You're keeping your topology, essentially the polygons that make up the mesh itself at the lowest resolution form, keeping them nice and consistent, and that's going to keep nice smooth lines and so on whenever you go into a high resolution mode. Okay, so this is unnecessarily big back here, so we can slide this down kind of halfway between these 2 points, this polyline and this polyline, and then we can adjust this as well. Again, I like to keep my models really nice and clean at all levels during the modeling process. Okay, so as I go around through here, I'm just going to keep pulling up and splitting the difference between poly loop line to poly loop line, and it will gradually be nice and consistent. Seems kind of tedious, but it is well worth it whenever you're creating precise models that are going to be worn by somebody that 3D prints them. All right, that's pretty good. Pretty good. All right. I don't think we have any triangles. They're all quads, and we're good to continue on. I don't like the gap that's here. The gap is too big. We're going to go back to the move tool. Actually, we'll go ahead and stay on the slide tool inside of Zmodeler. Don't want it to be quite so big right there. This is too big of a polygon, in my opinion. We'll end up inserting a poly loop line in here in just a minute. Hover over, go to insert, holding down spacebar while hovering over that white line. I continue holding the spacebar to keep this menu open. I'm going to select insert, and insert works a couple different ways too. You can go to multiple edge loops, and then when you left click and drag, it will insert multiple edge loops in symmetrical fashion along that polygon that you're manipulating, okay? Or along that polyline, poly loop that you're manipulating. Or if you keep it on single edge loop, you can do this and slide back and forth. If you keep it on multiple edge loop, and instead of sliding vertically with your mouse, you can slide horizontally, and it will insert in the direct middle point between the adjacent two poly loops. Okay? See what I mean? It's splitting that perfectly in half. But I don't need those. I just need that one right there. All right. It's looking pretty good. If I wanted to, I could insert another poly loop there, another poly loop there to keep things consistently all the way around the helmet, but I don't need to do that just yet. We'll go ahead and just insert this one, go back to auto group so I don't have different groups. All right, I'm going to go to the move tool down here, my move brush rather. I'm going to move this up, move this up, move this down, move this down. I want it a narrow eye slit. Move this down, move this down. I'm always looking at the eye socket to see where it is to make sure that I have good peripheral vision. And it also depends on what type of helmet you're modeling, right? Just kind of depends on what your goal is, what you're trying to recreate. If you're doing something original or if you're doing something that is a replica of an item that already exists from like a video game or something like that. Just work as you go. All right, it's looking pretty good. I want to change a few different things here. So it's going to be like a stylized helmet, a stylized Spartan helmet, so on. It's kind of what I'm going for. All right, I'm going to get a little bit drastic here. Pulling down these edges. All right. I'm just using the move brush to pull these things around. Okay. This is definitely in the wrong spot. I'm going to pull this down. Definitely in the wrong spot for what I'm trying to achieve. I want it to look nice and sleek, but also have some nice sharp edges. All right. Now you also have to keep in mind, if somebody's going to be able to slide this on, is there going to be enough space in here for somebody to slide it on? So you don't want to be too tight on this back end where the back of your skull bulges from where your neck is. You want to be able to have the person wear it. So you've got to keep that in mind as you're modeling this. And sometimes you mess up, sometimes you do. I've been doing this for about 15 years now, so I've kind of got an idea of if somebody's going to be able to put on the helmet or not after it's done being modeled, just based upon my experience of doing so. We've got enough space up front, and this does curve in a little bit on the back, but the way that you'll don the helmet, you'll be able to still slide it on your head, no problem. Want this to flare out a little bit. All right, like I said, you got to do it at different angles. Work your way around the helmet from different points of view. All right. Now, what do I want to do next? Do I have the base shape done? Do I need to refine it anymore? I want this to be a little bit more pointed at the front, kind of like that. And I want it to gradually come back up. So just keep rotating around the model, looking from different angles. It's all about, in my opinion, when you're doing something like this that is your own design. So this one, I don't want to change how far away this is from the head. So I'm going to go back to the Zmodeler brush and I'm going to hold over that point, make sure I'm on slide. I'm on a slide down so that I don't actually change the overall shape of the helmet when I move these poly loops. If your brush is too big, you'll end up getting more than one at a time. See how that one above right here actually moved a little bit. So you want to make sure your draw size isn't too large. Keep sliding down. Again, I know it seems tedious, but this is the process that I use to create all the wearable 3D prints that I create. Whether it's a full suit of armor, one bracer, one helmet, it's the same process that I follow. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to flatten out this front portion of the helmet. I want to do it kind of all at once. Have it more so concaved than convexed. All right. Push this in just a little bit. Push this end in just a little bit. You see what I'm doing. Am I going to collide with the cheeks? You can turn it at a different angle. No, I'm not going to collide with the cheeks. So you can continue on. Cheeks are the jawline. Nope, we're good. We are good. I keep moving around the model here, adjusting the polygons and poly loops as I go. Do I like the way that that reads? Do I like the way that it looks? Keep going around the model. You can go up to high res if you want to. Don't worry about this. It's not constrained yet. We haven't got to that point yet where we need to constrain that. But you can kind of see how it smooths out the flare of everything. See how it interacts with the head. So it's on high res. You can see that it's colliding with the helmet there, or with the head there. So I'm going to turn up my draw size and I'm going to grab this with the move tool and move this back out a little bit. Okay. See how I'm doing that? And then you can work your way around the model and observe the negative space around the head. It's pretty narrow right in through here. So pull that out a little bit. Okay. Looking pretty good. Still have plenty of room between the cheeks or the jawline and the face of the helmet. I like this slope in through here. I think it could be a little bit more sloped, a little bit more in through here. Okay. Go back to low resolution and we're looking pretty good. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and insert a poly loop. Go back to Zmodeler brush. We're on low resolution. I want to insert a poly loop in here, but I don't want that. I don't want multiple edge loops splitting the center point. I want to do a single poly loop and I want to bring it down to like right there. And then what I'm going to do is I think I can extrude out from this point. No, I can't. Let's see. Let's go to extrude, single edge loop, see if that works. Yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted. About like that. So what I did is I hovered over this poly loop line. I went to extrude edge slash edge loop. And I just extended that point. Okay. Now, it's kind of sunk in. It's not on the same plane as where this is right here. So if you wanted to put an internal visor, it might cause problems for you. So I want to get that lined up from there to there. And then I want to get this lined up about like that. Okay, then I can pull that in a little bit. There we go. You get the idea. All right, go to high resolution. I like narrow eye slits right there. And then we're going to go back to Zmodeler brush, and we're going to insert an edge loop here. And we're going to delete this. All right. I like the way that's looking. Let's see here. I kind of feel like I want to have this kind of open right in through here. It's kind of what I feel like. So I'm going to go to the move tool, and I'm going to leave this flare in the back, but I'm going to start gradually pulling these poly loops back up. And then I'm going to slide these back up. But instead of doing that, so that I don't distort the shape of the helmet too much, I'm going to go back to the move or the Zmodeler brush, make sure I'm on a slide, and I'm going to slide it up that way. That way I don't distort the shape of the helmet too much. If you grab some, I always keep my hands on the keyboard close to the Control Z. That way I can undo my last move as quick as possible. And I kind of like the way that's coming out. That way you can tilt your head side to side without colliding with the helmet, if that makes sense. All right, I like that. That's looking pretty good. We can slide this up just a little bit more. About like that right there. It's looking pretty good. Looking cool. I like it. I like it so far. We might end up bringing that portion down and having it flare to that point. Just kind of making it up as I go. Doing what I think looks cool. All righty. Looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do, I've got kind of the base shape of the helmet the way that I want to. But if I go forward and I manipulate it past this point and I don't save a variation of this, then I might not be able to go back to it in the future. So I'm going to duplicate this. At that mode, I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to continue moving forward with a new version, a new copy. Move this up. All right. And then I'm going to hover over with the Zmodeler brush, hover over a polygon, hold down spacebar, and I'm going to go to Q mesh. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is give this helmet some actual thickness. All right. But we're going to go to polygroup all. So it will select all that are the same polygroup. And I don't need a helmet. I don't need it to be any thicker than about that right there. Maybe 1/8 of an inch of thickness. Okay. See what I did? Now, when I go to high resolution, it's just going to be all kind of distorted. But whenever I come in tight and I start crisping these lines up, I'm going to constrain them when I crease them, and it will keep it at the shape that it is whenever I go to, like these sharp corners, 90-degree corners and stuff like that. Hold down spacebar, make sure that I'm on a poly loop, make sure that I'm on crease, and you can change it to poly loop partial, complete, or edge. Partial is usually what I use, and it'll go to an intersection and then stop. Okay. You want to do inside and outside. A lot of times I'll turn it on solo mode whenever I'm doing this. Edge loop, crease. Now watch what it does. Edge loop, crease right there and right there. Turn to high res. See how it keeps that sharp corner? But if you don't do the inside and the outside of the model, you'll still have little problems like that right there. Okay. Oh, lost it. Where'd we go here? Like that right there. But the reason why we have that is because it's rolling over the inside, but then I constrain that and then go to high res. It's nice and crisp. You see what I mean? Do the same thing right here on this bottom corner. Go back to low res, and I want to constrain the inside here. High res, it's not rounded over anymore. You see how that works? All right, I'm going to work my way around the helmet and get all these lines nice and crisp, inside and outside. Make sure you're hovering over the right part. You want it to turn white. All right. Around the visor is looking really good. You can see how that's rounded over there. Low res, select that. High res, okay. And then inside, oh, undo. Inside and outside. Another way that you can do this is you can hover over a polygon and you can still go to crease and you can do to this the same way. And it's just, you might end up missing a spot. Increase all that edge that's associated with the polygon that you're on. Boom. See what I mean? And then you can hover over again. You can go to single polygon and you can do polygroup all. Okay. You can crisp all the green polygroups, all of the green along that edge. Okay. See how it's all, see that it's kind of a dotted line around the edge of that polyline. All right. There you go. High res, low res. You'll see the difference now. High resolution. But we have some, no, we're good. We're good. All right, I think we're golden. And then you can turn on polyframe mode and you can kind of see how your helmet looks. Okay, but we have some poly loops in through here that are crisped, that are creased, that we don't want. So we're gonna go to low res, we're gonna turn polyframe back on, and it's creasing those. So you hover over that point, crease is on, we're gonna go to edge, hold down Alt, and then select those with left click, and it will uncrease them. This one's fine, I like that one, but we don't want them here and here. So then I'll change the angle of the helmet, and uncrease those with Alt and left click. And you can see what's happening here. All right, turn that off. Now, whenever you do end up creasing these, it makes things jut out like that. So then what you can do is you can go to Move Tool, turn your draw size up a little bit, turn polyframe mode if you want to on. But then you can adjust this in. I'm going to pull that in so that I get rid of where it's bulging out. I don't like it bulging out there. I want it to be nice and smooth. Still bulging out. All right, that's looking better. It's drooping a little bit. I don't want it to droop, so I'll pull that back up. Still bulging out a little bit right there, and you can manually adjust it. All right, same with right here. See how this point kind of bulges out? I do like that though, because I'm going to end up creasing this part of the helmet. And I can go poly loop partial. And you can see how it creates that ridge from front to back. I do like that. All right. This I don't want to be creased. I want this to be a nice smooth curve. So I'm going to hold down spacebar over that point, go to edge instead of edge loop partial, go to edge, hold down alt, left click, hold down alt, left click, hold down alt, left click. And now it's a nice smooth curve. That's what I want. I do, however, like this, how it's nice and rigid from here to here. This one can be uncreased though. That's kind of cool. I don't know. We'll see what it looks like. So we'll uncrease that. Do we like the smooth there? Because then we can kind of pull that back if we want to. I kind of like that smooth sweep there. Keep that nice and constrained. I don't know. We'll see. We'll uncrease that and see if it looks better. I actually think that kind of looks better. So then here on the front, we're going to uncrease these too. All right. Looks pretty cool. Looks pretty cool. I think it's looking good. All right, now let's turn the head model on. Turn off solo, turn the head model on. The nose is right there. Looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. I like the way that it's shaped. I like the way that it's interacting with the head. I like the negative space on the inside. Plenty of space for somebody to slide on the helmet and wear it. Right. Now, let's continue on here. We can turn low resolution back on and continue on. Now, I also like to save a variation of this. So I'm going to go to duplicate. I'm going to turn that one off. I'm going to slide it up. And you see all my variations down through here. Pretty sure that there's a way of doing it like V1, V2, and so on. I can't remember how to do it. I haven't done it in years, so I'm not going to mess with it right now. But I do like to have these individual subtools that can be exported. All right. Every once in a while, I'm still looking back over at my reference images on my other screen here. This, in my opinion, is kind of a problem. We're going to go back to move. I don't like the way that this portion right here is jutting out. If you have a move tool big enough, it will also grab the vertice on the inside of the helmet and push that in as well. As long as you don't have back face masking on. All right. Looking pretty good. How does the side profile look? I kind of like it. I kind of like the side profile. Go to high res again, see how we're shaping up. I kind of feel like pulling this into the forehead a little bit more. I kind of feel like doing that. So then I'm going to grab this, push it in, grab this, push that in, and then we're going to do some pretty serious manipulation here. It can tend to be kind of tricky, but instead of having this gradual slope, I want it to come down and be a little bit more sharp. So I'm going to grab this, move this in like that. I'm using the move brush, and I kind of like the way that is looking. Move that in. Move this in, turn down the draw size just a little. Move this in, move that in. Let's go to high resolution and see how that looks. Okay, this is a little bit distorted here. Turn my draw size down. I'm going to grab this inner point. See how it's getting wider and bigger. I don't want that. So I'm going to try and keep that consistent thickness from the inside of the helmet to the outside of the helmet. Okay. Turn off polyframe mode just to kind of view it without all the distractions. Turn on polyframe mode. Whoop. There we go. I don't like that point there, so we're going to pull that back, pull that back, pull that back, grabbing each individual poly loop or vertice. High res. All right. Looking pretty snazzy. Don't like this sticking out the way that is. Grab that, pull that back in like that right there. Adjust this up a little bit. Adjust that inside one a little bit. Adjust this inside one a little bit. Pull that outer one out. This doesn't quite need to be like that. I want it more like this right here. The hotkeys in ZBrush are really the key. If you don't know how to use the hotkeys in ZBrush, the only way that you're going to learn is by utilizing them and as you 3D model stuff. And it just takes some time. It takes years. I can move through this really fast because I've been using ZBrush for many years. And I'm constantly having to relearn stuff too because ZBrush is constantly changing the way that their program works, updates and stuff like that. So you just got to use it. Got to use it and you'll get better. And again, I'm just looking at things that I think need to be adjusted. This is going to be different for every person. We're not all going to think the same stuff needs to be adjusted. That's all I'm doing is just going through, looking at the shape. I like that. No, I don't like that. I want something changed. I might not always know exactly what I want to have changed at that moment in time, but I just kind of play with it, keep working with it, and adjusting it. So this, what I'm doing, since this is a very narrow distance between these 2 points, I'm grabbing the inner one and it's also grabbing the outer one. If I grabbed the outer one, it's going to smush it together. If I grab the inner one, it's going to pull them both together and keep a better consistency of distance between those 2 points, as long as my brush size is the right size. You'll have to play with it and just get familiar with the program to see if that thickness based upon your brush size stays the same. Looking pretty cool. One thing that I don't like is this is too rounded. Okay, too rounded right here. I want it to be just nice and straight. So I'm going to start adjusting that now to keep it nice and straight. From this view. Nice angular line. I want it to look nice and sharp, nice and mean. You know what I mean? Rather than rounded. Kind of like if you're imagining a scowl on the face of this helmet. All right. Looking pretty good. Pretty good, pretty good. All right. So that variation that I saved, I'm happy with where I am with these new adjustments. I'm going to delete that other one. I'm going to save that variation, turn it off, and then go back to where I was. All right. Polyframe mode. I like the shape of it. I like the way it's looking. Looks pretty clean, pretty good. Maybe pull that out just a little bit, push that down just a little bit. I'm using a large brush on the move tool. All right. Now on here on the back, I want it to be a little bit more sharp than what we have here. So I'm going to use the move tool again. And I'm going to bring that in kind of like that right there. I want it to be a little bit more sharp on the back there. I like the way it's looking. I like the way it's looking. All right. So again, delete that one that I had duplicated, duplicate that and go back to there, turn that one off. So now I think we can continue on. I could play with this all day, but I think that this is where I want to move on from this point. Okay. Let's see here. Which one am I interested in? I'm looking at my reference images to see which features that I like here. I'll go ahead and bring this back onto the screen for y'all. So I'm taking variations of things from this a little bit. I'm not sure about this portion right in through there, but I kind of like the idea of this. I've got kind of a modified version of that. There's different aspects here. This one's really cool. I like the visor like that. I might end up adding this in the future, but I like the shape of that. I like the shape of this and this shape. There's aspects of this that I like. Really cool. This is neat. I like the way this is working. This is kind of similar to what I have. This shape is really sharp and aggressive looking. I like that. There's shapes in here that I like. So I always have multiple reference images. This one's really clean. I really think I like the idea of this one. That one's really cool. I thought I'd seen another one, but I don't see it here. I don't see it on my reference images out of these. But I'd seen another one that had a really cool looking spike on the top. But I'm not seeing it. There are parts of this that I like. So I'm just comparing all of these and going to end it. And I like the embossing on this. The embossing on this is just really slick looking. It looks like something that a king would wear back in medieval times. The embossing on this is really cool. Yeah, a lot of different aspects that I like here. This one's kind of cool. This one is. So as I'm working through here, I'm just looking at my reference images and deciding which ones that I like the most in different aspects of them. So this is going to be a stylized Spartan helmet that is futuristic. It's from the book series Red Rising. It is takes place 700 years into humanity's future, and if you haven't read it, it is in a fantastic book series. All right, let's go back to polyframe mode, go back to low resolution, and we're going to continue on. What do I want to work on first? All right, what do I need to work on first? What aspects of these other helmets do I like that needs to be addressed first? I think potentially the crest on the top needs to be worked on first. The crest on the top, which is my favorite. Pick one, pick one. I like the low profile version of this one right here. I like the low profile version, this one right here. But I also like the stylized version of this one right here. So, and this one right here. So maybe we'll do kind of a variation of each and see how that works. All right. So we're going to be in low polyframe mode. All right, low polygon mode, low resolution. And we're going to go back to the Zmodeler brush. And we're going to put some constraints in here. We're going to do insert there, I think. Insert a poly loop there. Then we're going to highlight this section. Actually, I think I want to insert a poly loop here so it's a little bit wider. Turn that off. Insert poly loop there. Backface masking. Go to solo, make sure I'm not highlighting the inside. I did highlight the inside there. I'm going to unhighlight that and continue highlighting. When you get to this point and you have a thin thickness of your helmet, you want to make sure that whenever you are highlighting polygons, that you're not highlighting polygons on the inside as well. All right. I think that's pretty good. I think I like where that lands if I keep it to right there. Make sure I didn't highlight any on the inside. And now I'm going to hover over this section here, hold down space. I'm going to go to Q mesh, okay? And then I'm going to extrude this out. Like that right there. Make sure I have nothing on the inside that's extruding. I'm going to extrude that like that though. All right. Then I'm going to insert another poly loop here by hovering over that, left clicking, and sliding it down to where I want. I'm just making it up as I go. None of this is precise. I'm just kind of making it up. All right. Now I'm going to highlight this inner portion. Again, I'm going to observe the inside, make sure I'm not getting anything that I don't want. And then I'm going to hover over this space and I'm going to go to inset single poly group because it's highlighted. And you see how I did that? I'm going to left click and drag. It's going to inset that a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to hover over this and I'm going to go back to Q mesh and I'm going to sink that down inside. And it's going to do that entire poly group that is that color. Sink that down like that. And then I'm going to hover over and extrude that out about like that, right there. Then I can high resolution it. Okay. Kind of see what it looks like before I crease these edges. I don't like this. I've got those humps and valleys and stuff like that. That doesn't look right, but we'll adjust that. Don't worry, we'll adjust that. The reason why it's doing that is because the closer poly loops are to one another, they constrain each other. So they restrict each other's movement when it comes down to smoothing themselves out whenever you go to a higher resolution mode. It's kind of like this. Watch. So see how smooth that is like that? Now watch what I do whenever I put, what happens whenever I put poly loops right up close to each other. See how that happened? We don't like that. So we'll adjust it as we go. It's no big deal. But we're going to go to high resolution. see where we need attention, and we need attention in through here. Go back to low resolution, turn down our draw size, and we're going to start manipulating this a little bit. Okay, so we're going to grab these points here, and I want this to be not fanning out in a wide like this. I want it to become more narrow as it gets taller. So we're going to grab this here. We're going to go to the move tool, and we're going to pull this in, pull this in. I'm just left clicking on these vertices and pulling them in. Left clicking and holding. All right, just like that. Okay, now we're going to go back to high resolution and see how that looks. Okay, a little more narrow. All right, low res. Now we're going to adjust this. Slide that down, slide that down, slide this down, slide that down. Now let's see what happens. A little more smooth. We can leave it in high resolution mode, and we can adjust this as well. Sometimes you need to slide the poly loops back away from each other, and they will gradually smooth themselves out. All right, go back to low res. That down, move that down, move that down. Left clicking and holding is all I'm doing right now on those different vertices. All right, high res. Low res. All right. So now I'm going to do some stylization. This is kind of janky right here. So we're going to turn our draw size down. We're going to go to Zmodeler brush. We're going to hover over that point. We're going to go to slide. Slide that back like that. Slide this back like that. Okay. This is kind of distorted from what I actually want. I'm going to go to the move brush, pull this back down. If anything, I would want that pointed this way rather than the other direction. Slide that like that. Like that. All right. We're going to move this way, this way. And then let's turn on high resolution and see what happens. Of course, looks kind of funky. Now we can go back to the Zmodeler brush and we can go to crease, edge loop, partial, and we can crease these edge loops. High res. That's when you see it creased all the way across down that poly loop. I didn't want that. So I'm going to have to go down to low resolution and do single edge loop instead of creasing partial. We're just gradually creasing things to see the way things look, see if I like it. If I don't like it, it's just all about getting the feel for it. Getting the feel for the model. That is rounding over there. There we go. All right. Just moving to make sure that I have all the edges creased that I want to have creased. Thinking about uncreasing this edge. Holding down Alt and left clicking to uncrease. If you see a dotted line, that means you're selecting the poly loop on the inside of the helmet. If you see a straight line, you're selecting the correct one on the outside of the helmet. So just keep that in mind. We go to the slide tool and I want to slide this down. I want this to kind of be pointed here. Sometimes you got to switch the brush that you're using just to make sure that you kind of keep things oriented like you had them. Like that got distorted. Right. This poly loop right here is causing a distorted shape that I don't want. I want this to be nice and smooth from front to back. But because these poly loops are so close to one another, it's distorting the smooth shape of the helmet. So what I need to do is I need to pull this back, get it out of the way to where it smooths out a lot better. I like doing this in a low resolution mode because it will translate to the high resolution mode and it will keep me from doing more work later, trying to smooth things out that should have been done earlier. Then we can come back here, use the move tool, and push that down a little bit. Smoothed it out pretty good. All right, polyframe mode, low resolution. I want to insert here. I want to insert there, there, and there. But instead of doing the single edge loop, I'll do multiple so it's perfectly centered in between. All right. And then I want to start extruding this out even more. We're going to go to Auto Group. We're going to highlight this. And we are going to extrude these out separately. Like that. I don't want it to snap. So we can turn snap off. No alignment. Single poly group, no alignment, one side poly, weak attraction. Okay, so it's not, we're gonna have to manipulate each one before we go to extrude the others out. So we'll move this over like that. Auto group. So maybe we can go to extrude. There we go. That's what we want. We need to move this over a little bit before we extrude that next one. That way we're not colliding with each other when we're trying to manipulate each one separately. Move this one over a little bit. Just going back to the move tool to grab these and move them over, then back to the Zmodeler brush, hold down spacebar, we're on extrude. Okay, it keeps it from snapping together. Okay. Move that over a little bit. And extrude. All right. It's kind of what I wanted there. Now we can go in here and manipulate this even more. All right. See how they can get kind of stuck together there. Just pull back and forth on them and then they'll end up separating. All right. Getting a little closer to what I want. Give me just a second. I got a message that I probably should read. See what high resolution looks like. All right, give me just a second. I'll be right back. Hey, girl. You know how to start. Yeah, you should make sure that the vent is on properly. Otherwise, it won't sear. And don't worry about seasoning. Seasoning will do that. And that's fine. Thank you. Come get me if you need me. Okay. All right. I am back. Now, I want to start creasing these edges. Zmodeler, and we want to crease these edges. We're going to go to crease, edge loop partial. Let's see how that works. Going to be some tedious work, but we can do it. Just left clicking on each one of these highlighted poly loops or edge loops, whatever you want to call them. All right, now let's go to high res and see what happened there. All right, good. So then I want to uncrease this. This. I want to actually recrease those. Insert edge loops here, or poly loops here. We want to uncrease this. All right. And I'm going to start kind of moving these around a little bit because I want it to smooth out. So I'm going to manually move things. Just using the move brush. Sometimes I get into kind of concentration mode and forget to talk. But all I'm doing is just moving these points around until I get it to where it looks good to my eye, you know what I mean? And again, I'm kind of doing my own thing on this model. I'm not following any tutorial or anything like that. I'm just kind of looking at reference images and picking things that I like and making my own helmet from it. So it might not be something that you like or something that, you know, I might not end up adjusting something that you think looks good. It's just I'm trying to teach you the process of how I model cosplay armor. Now, this is kind of a problem. You get all these poly loops and they're creating distortions in the smoothness of the helmet, and it's just a process to fix. So I could remove all these poly loops that I inserted and it will smooth things out, but will also end up changing some of the work that I've done. Smoothed it out a little bit. We can turn up our draw size. Backface masking is on. Let's see how much it causes problems for us. See how you're seeing double lines now? It's because I smoothed it out and it changed the thickness of the helmet in between the outside and the inside. So most likely need to do it manually in order to keep that distortion from happening and keeping the thickness that we need on the inside of the helmet. So draw size down, go to Zmodeler, hover over this point, and we will just start to slide some things around a little bit. See if we can get things to smooth out. A little better. Definitely better. And then at the end, before I get ready to process it to 3D print, I can come in here and smooth things once I turn it into a Dynamesh. That's looking pretty good though. Stay tuned for the next video though, guys. That is all that I have today, all that I have time for today. I'll get this video out to y'all, and then the next video that I come back, we'll be finishing this out the rest of the way so y'all can see the process from going to this 3D model, getting it buttoned up the way that you want it to, and then going to the point where you can get it 3D printed. Greatly appreciate y'all being here. Please like, share, and subscribe. I need all the help that I can get. And I hope y'all enjoyed this tutorial, and I will catch y'all next time. Y'all take care, guys. Bye-bye.